Welcome to Exit Stage Left. I'm your host, Neethi Bali, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. We're people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or a promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that's being hidden from you, and we are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. If you have any questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. Today, I am joined by Tammy Healy, the host of the American State Assembly's podcast and co-leader of the Outreach Think Tank. Welcome, Tammy.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I mean, it's been a while since we've done our podcast here, but I appreciate you having me back on and, having this opportunity to speak to the people about a really great topic today. So I'm excited for the conversation.
Welcome back. Yes. And thank you. And we're walking into summer. I think all of us are on a little bit of a summer vibe. So that's cool. And
well, I literally took Anna's advice when she said, take a bit of a break. So I'm taking a bit of a break from the assembly. There's a lot of work to be done, but my family life has been busy. So that's kind of been keeping me busy. All good stuff, but nonetheless, it's been crazy over here.
I get the feeling. And we've been doing kind of the same thing. We are maybe going to move locally, but there's just a lot of stuff up in the air right now. So anyway, I want to welcome everyone. This episode that we are going to do today is for all businessmen that are out there. So anybody who's out there who is an entrepreneur, this conversation is for you. Especially skilled tradesmen, but also any entrepreneur, especially here on American soil. I know that people are watching us from all over the planet. I don't know how this works everywhere. It should work everywhere, but I definitely know here on the states, we have a different type of standing because we actually won a kinetic war. We all stand under the Declaration of Independence, and it's a really big year, Tammy. This year is our 250th anniversary coming up here on the 4th of July. So all of us are in a different kind of celebratory mood, I think.
And we don't want to forget that not just July 4th, but September 7th is our federation.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Yeah. So most people don't know, but, the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, 1776. But just a few months later, we also had the formation of our Federation of States doing business as the United States of America. And that came to fruition September 7th of 1776. So we've got a lot to celebrate. And, ironically, our family reunion is scheduled for that time period too. But I love it because, this conversation is going to kind of take us back to that time period where businessmen and women were able to conduct the affairs of their business free of, government interference. So, let's get into this, Neethi. I know you're a little bit more experienced at this than me. I had a business years ago and I was a corporation. And so,
we all were.
Yes. And, not just individually, but I conducted my business as a corporation too. So I don't have a corporation or a business, so to speak, right now that I'm engaged in. So, we have so much information that's coming at us at one time that my brain is like, hey, if you need that information, that's when you're going to get it. But if you don't need it right now, don't worry about it. So I'm going to rely on you mostly for the topic of this discussion. I mean, I know the gist of it, and I've got a lot of questions. So I would love to dive into this and help our other fellow Americans who have been unlawfully converted into U.S. citizens, which is just a fancy word and a misguided word for a British territorial citizen.
And so and a Papist municipal one.
Right, right. And
Mhm.
so, I think that those people are going to be interested in learning how can they get out from underneath the grips of this criminal enterprise that we've known our whole lives to be the federal government. So,
So I would like to go a little bit further with that. And from now on, when we think government or want to say government, I would like to encourage everybody to say the corporation, the corporatocracy, because it is the corporation. This is what our forefathers were escaping when they came here. You know, I don't know if y'all really have put a lot of thought into this, but normally living men and women are not interested in just packing everything up, going out on the high seas to go maybe find somewhere else to be, to live. We don't do that. We don't do it lightly. I don't believe at all that anyone who made the long trip over those high seas under those conditions so very long ago, when they had these ships that had no temperature control, no nothing, I'm pretty confident they didn't joyfully just jump on the boat and say, oh, let's go build a new life somewhere, anywhere, and I can only take whatever I can fit on this boat with all these other people. So this isn't something that they did lightly. They were literally escaping like refugees, running for their lives from the corporatocracy. And then here we are, captured again by the corporatocracy. If you aren't really clear about what we mean about that, please go back to episode 1 and just like watch the whole podcast here, all the recordings that we've got from the beginning, and try to catch up. But here's a big piece of information. I've been, Tammy, working with farmers and working in the, food freedom, I'd say pathway for 25 years or more now. Okay. And on that journey, the thing that I've been working to try to help, farmers do, originally I thought, oh, this is a marketing thing. No, it's not. This is actually a problem of overreaching corporatocracy, where what they're doing is land grabbing. They are regulating business on the land and soil for living men and women, and it doesn't work. Okay. What I mean is that it's not viable. It's definitely not a viable thing for living men and women. Okay. It's
yeah,
only.
and I would let's just pause there for a second, especially if we've got, maybe some people for the first time hearing this. They were allowed to regulate stuff on the high seas and navigable inland waterways. That was what they were given the delegated powers to do.
Well,
And so,
let's just stop there for one more second. Commerce,
yes,
commercial corporate business is only to be had on the high seas and inland waterways. It is a water jurisdiction enterprise. All enterprises on the water are incorporated and operating in commerce. And the reason why that's happening, the reason they set it up that way, y'all, is because what happens out in the high seas? Chaos, confusion, death. All men know, all living men know that the only thing that can happen out on the high seas is chaos. I mean, men love a challenge, right? Men love to go out there and battle with nature, and this is what guys live for. And but just let's be honest about what's happening here. The reason that we created corporations in the first place was because men wanted to do business, between all the lands on the earth. Okay. That requires you to go take product onto the high seas or the inland waterways to get it from here to there. Okay. So what was the biggest problem? The risk that these men were taking was, they could lose the whole ship because a storm or whatever, or they could get pirated. Now, whatever might happen out on the high seas, nobody's ever going to know. It can't be regulated. It's straight confusion and chaos. And so who was going to do the shipping for you? Who is going to do the logistics for you? Nobody was going to take that risk for you, because back then, and even now you don't really know this, but it was a feudal system. So if you cause harm, like lose all their product or all of their people or whatever, right? Because the ship goes down.
Whatever they were shipping, yeah.
Right. Then you're going to be hung because you're responsible for that. So that means who's going to risk their life? Like literally, if they go out and they make it back home and they lose anything along the way or whatever, or something gets damaged or who knows what, they were personally being held responsible for that. Right. And nobody was going to do that. So in order for that to be done
mitigated,
in a way, right, to mitigate that liability, that responsibility, they created
a fictitious entity known as a corporation. Yeah,
correct. And so commerce is only supposed to be conducted on the water and the high seas, inland waterways. So if you, and I know, if you're running a corporation and you don't ever go on the water, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so I was asked the question, why did I have a nonprofit unless I just wanted bankruptcy protection? Because really everything I was doing was on the land and there was no risk to mitigate except maybe bankruptcy. And I said, nah, I didn't establish a corporation for that, because I didn't. And also because I didn't even think about that even one time. But I don't think most people do that. Most people don't start a business and prepare for their bankruptcy protection. I mean, that's not what they do.
Yeah.
They might be thinking about how to not, be held liable for harm in some other way. But a lot of the things that people mitigate for is not even actual harm, right, Tammy?
Right. And going back when I started my business, I was really young. I was 22 when I first started, and it was recommended by, an accountant. Well, first it was recommended by a friend who had multiple businesses and was very successful, said you have to incorporate your business. And I just listened, and I think, unfortunately, for a lot of us, we just follow along and do as we're told, because this is how society operates, without questioning it, without researching it. And it just said, okay, show me what I have to do. I'll go to an accountant. They're the expert. And they set me up with an S Corp. And, the next thing I know, I was functioning my business as the way I thought it should be. And, I never had any issues or any problems, but there is a whole onslaught of things that you get protections from, like contracts that had to be created and all sorts of different things in order to operate, because you're afraid of getting sued, and really it all stems around that wonderful word called attorneys and, the legal system. And, you have to worry about whether you're going to be sued. And so I remember back then thinking, well, I think I could just work it out with the man or woman that I'm working with. I don't really understand this, but I said, okay, I'll go along because you're the expert. And I'm just, 22 years old. I'm just going to do what you say because you know best.
Right.
And I think that that's how it happens for a lot of people. But we are here today to tell you how it is supposed to be done and what you can do to get out of it if you are incorporated and you want to get out from the grips that are binding you and enslaving you.
The other reason that people do it is real estate. So the reason that a lot of people have to be, or they think they have to be incorporated, is because they can't have a commercial space. Okay. And that's not true either. So I'm here to tell you that
yes,
you can get around that, because that's another big reason. Most people who start a business, they may or may not. I mean, well, a lot of the folks, like if you're a skilled tradesman, you don't necessarily need a commercial space. You may want a warehouse or something like that. I know a lot of guys who are able to, use a lot of these public storage spaces and things like that to just manage their gear or whatever. And if you haven't done that, I mean, that's something to look into. It's more reasonable to get a public storage space, garage, a couple of extra, places like that, especially even around different areas of town that you maybe frequently have customers that you serve, and you want a couple of little bases or whatever. It's way more affordable to have a couple of those spaces rented out for you to warehouse your things, because that's really what a lot of those kind of people, like tradesmen, that's what you mostly need, right? But
can you touch on how would somebody, if they can't use a public storage space to do their business, let's just say?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to iron this out. So the next thing is, people who want, like, if you're trying to make yourself, a big retail space, this becomes a lot more challenging. Okay. And there are ways to do it. One of the ways to do it actually is you could incorporate it, and then you could unincorporate it, and no one's ever going to go check. Okay. There's that. Like just to get past the landlord check, and really all they really need is to make sure that you are insured, because they're counting on that. They don't really understand and comprehend indemnity, and our indemnification that we have makes us way more responsible than the stupid insurance ever will. And if all they want is the insurance, it's a cheap solution for you to just pay.
And now, what does the insurance company? What does the insurance
problems with them?
What does the insurance company require when you are applying for insurance for your business? What do they require? Do they need an EIN number?
A check. They need a check. Okay. Actually, they come and they inspect the space and they see how you're operating, because they want to see what it is that they're insuring. So that's it.
But if you are brand new and you're trying to say lease a space,
mm-hmm.
but then the landlord is looking for your insurance, but would you have to then set it up with the landlord for them to come and check out the space in order to insure you? Like, how does that work?
No. Once you get your space and you start setting it up and you're doing whatever you're doing, then you get insurance after that. And a lot of people, when they get their space, they're going to upfit it first. And
so the landlord will allow you.
Well, hold on, Tammy. Wait a minute.
Well, but
I'm going in order. Just let me say this all in order. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you rent space, anybody who gets commercial space, 99% of the time, when you get your commercial space, unless you're using it as a warehouse or something, or you're going to upfit it yourself, then you have to call someone, or you have to have licensed people to come and upfit it, meaning like they're going to have to come. And so it is, by the way, possible for you to, and it's reasonable for you to incorporate like a LLC just long enough to set it all up, and then you can dissolve that corporation right after that. Okay. That's just to appease them. There's no reason not to do it. Okay. No one's going to be checking back, because all of these people are acting in fraud. All right. So what about people who operate in fraud? This is something you need to know. People who operate in fraud don't go back and check things that they don't want to check, because they just want to make money. Okay. And so they just want to keep collecting the money, and they're not going to go back to check to see anything about it. Let me just state that fact. Okay. So once you have actually got the space set up the way that you need it to be, because a lot of those guys won't come and work there or whatever. If you own the property, it's better because you can do that any way you want. If you don't own the property, then you can't protect and defend it in the same way. These are things to consider if you're running a business. If you're running the business and you, for example, have a piece of land that you own and you can use it commercially, because I know a lot of people who own land and it's commercially zoned already. Okay. In that case, you can protect and defend it. Okay. And here's the other part of it. You don't really want it to be commercially zoned. You might want to change the zoning to farmland, which they often will, or agriculture. If you get it moved into an ag, if most commercial land, I should just say, also can be used agriculturally. They're going to want to know, what do you mean by agriculture? Are you going to have animals on it? They're going to probably have a problem with that. If you're just going to plant some plants and use it as a greenhouse or something like that, they're not going to have anything to say about that. But if you're trying to bring animals out there, it's a kind of a different thing. These are just things for you to know. Okay. Just things to think about and ways that you can protect and defend the land. But I should digress. I don't want to get too far into some of this stuff, Tammy, because it depends where you are, what your town's rules and regulations are, all the things as to how you're going to overcome it.
But and probably the type of business, right? The type of business that you're.
What you want to make sure your business type is a trade. Here's the thing that you need to comprehend fully is living men and women only offer trade. Right. Living men and women don't do anything in commerce unless you go out on the high seas.
Can you pause there just for a second? Because I think that this is the confusing factor, right? Because when you say tradesmen, right, what we have known and have become accustomed to thinking tradesman is like electrician, a plumber, a carpenter. But no, what Nithya is saying is that a tradesman is everybody that operates a business, because we operate in trade. We're trading, right? So say, for instance, Nithya is going to sell me some raw milk, and I'm going to her.
Well, let's talk about something that they might think about. Like, instead of raw milk, okay, let's say that I am going to sell, or I opened up a Bed Bath & Beyond style store that's not part of the chain of Bed Bath & Beyond, okay? But I'm still going to be selling her soaps, lotions, perfume, or I don't know, candles.
Right, or towels or bedding or whatever. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I just wanted to let them know that it could be something that they think of like that.
Right. It could be materials. It could be services. But
it could be hairstyling. It could be nails. It could be, first of all, those are trades also. Okay. But I don't think people think about the female trades of,
it could just be mercantile, like a mercantile store where you're getting, I don't know, toiletries or cleaning products or anything. Right. But it all is operating in trade and not in commerce. Right. And so that is why you call it tradesmen. I just wanted to clear that up.
Even a restaurant is trading, because I am making let's just look at Wimpy going to he says, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for my hamburger today. And the joke right there is that he's not paying you and nobody is, because if they're giving you a promissory note, they're promising that they'll gladly pay you Tuesday. But they're not going to pay you on Tuesday either, Yeah. Okay. I think that hopefully we've made the point that there's nothing that you're going to want to open a business for that isn't a trade. Maybe let's try to think, what could they be doing that's not a trade? What are the stores that we see? What are the places that we go, Tammy? What are the places? gas
Mm,
store, gas
gas.
station. Okay. That's a trade. Okay. Grocery store.
That's
All,
trade.
all trade. The clothes store.
That's a trade.
The tailor. Starbucks. Starbucks is trade, even though it's a corporation trading. But like, if you have your own coffee shop, if you have your own burger joint, if you have your own bar and grill, if you have your own dance studio, if you have your own
mechanic shop.
mechanic shop. Now, everyone I think knows mechanics, welding, all these things are trades. Oh, what about the guy that's buying old computers and he's like the Radio Shack selling parts and pieces?
I miss Radio Shack.
I know, right? Like, he's making up his own Radio Shack with all the old stuff. Like, bring all your tinkering stuff.
Hey,
yeah,
there's an idea, by the way. You know, if anybody likes that kind of stuff, we could use one of those shops.
We need it. We need a guy that can fix the thing.
Yes.
You know, using all the old things that they take apart and repurpose and up. Oh, what if your shop is just upfitting old computer hardware pieces or fridges? I got a guy. My favorite guy is the guy that I get the fridges and the freezers from, and he goes and gets all the old fridges from every apartment community because I got to turn them over every so many years. And he goes and he's changing out their fridges and their stoves and whatever. So all these upcycling items, maybe your business only just does that. Maybe you are doing a different local version of UPS, or maybe you're that guy. Maybe you're the guy that I hire to go down to the clerk of court. You're the you're my
service,
guy,
right?
Yeah, the service, the courier service.
Yes.
So there's local courier services. What else do we do? Car wash.
Right. I mean, the list is endless, honestly.
Right.
But I will say we do need to point out the types of businesses that are commerce, like an Uber driver or a taxi driver.
But why is that commerce? That's only commerce because you're using the Uber company. Okay, let's just be clear. If you start the Healy car ride system, I don't know, like whatever that is, right? Like anybody could do that, right? But yes, if you are tying yourself to one of these companies, these corporations, then you're still trading your sweat equity. Okay.
Yeah, but I do think that that's part of the corporatocracy's our service agreement with them.
You mean
they get
driving?
To regulate the public roads for driving?
Yes. They don't actually. They only get to regulate firearms, tobacco, and alcohol.
Yeah.
They don't get to regulate our roads.
But I'm pretty sure that that's why truck drivers have to maintain their CDL driver's license, because back in the day, they required them to hold a license and they were charging registration fees because it was that money that was used to upkeep the roads.
Right. Okay. This is also part of the tax lie. And at this red hot minute, we're in a moment of duality. And so probably you can't break away from that at this red hot minute.
Right.
But if you did your own transportation system, I'll use a different example, Tammy. Okay. So instead of being an Uber driver, right? What if you were really good at PT? What if you're a good PT person? You know how to do PT. You know how to help people in wheelchairs and whatever. And you want to start your own courier service for patients, like helping somebody who has a wheelchair who needs to get to their PT, and all you're doing is transporting them to and from, like you're doing kind of a home health care service for someone to be able to get from home to wherever they need to go because they need someone to help physically bring them to go to PT, go to the grocery store, go to whatever. There are people that need stuff like that. If you need a home health, actually home health care, if you're doing home health care and you need to transport people and that's going to be your business, you could do that and operate in trade. Okay. You can do home health care and operate in trade. There's all of these things where you have to care about somebody and care about what you're doing. You know, these are, I mean, most of the stuff that we do besides driving for Uber or driving a truck right now, you can pretty much do it. I can't think of what you can't do.
Let's get back to you know, people being able to operate as a tradesman, and what the steps would be to, or what would attract people to want to, what are the benefits?
So first of all, let's just start with what we're discussing now is we want you guys to consider that you can nationalize your business. Okay. We want you, this is called nationalizing your business by unincorporating, by expatriating, and then by deregulating yourself. Okay. Some of the major benefits are taxation. You aren't participating in tax theft. The other benefit is you're deregulated. You're not being regulated by the Fed because the Fed is dead to you. Okay. Now you're being regulated by the people that you serve. And wouldn't you prefer that? I mean, it's preferable to be regulated by those who you are in service to. And, you know, they can just say, hey, don't ever go to this place again. Or, you know, oh my gosh, we tried to do that and it didn't work. But
yeah,
you know,
that's why they've got reviews, right? That's why you could read reviews online of somebody's product or their service. And, you know, and so that's the whole point of being able to look at those reviews. How many stars did they get? Did they get 1 or did they get 5? You know,
you know, and just, I want to make one point that you can't really deregulate a lot of the things that are on the roads, but one of the things that you could keep doing and deregulate yourself is being a mover. And you want to know how?
Yes, tell me how.
It's kind of a simple little loophole. You just tell whoever it is that you're moving that, you know, I don't know how many of you guys have ever heard of this company. It's called like 3 Men in a Truck. Some college. Yes. Have you? Okay. So there were some college kids here on North Carolina that started that company. They were just they were Carolina students. Okay. Who were like, well, we're 3 guys, you know, and 3 men in a truck. And, but if you don't have the truck, it's better. If you use a U-Haul, or if you tell whoever it is that you're going to go move, just say, well, I'm going to bring the 3 men. I need you to rent the U-Haul. So when you do that, then now they can drive the U-Haul, or you can drive the U-Haul. They can pack it and follow you, or they can do it for you, however you guys agree to. But if they're using a U-Haul, you could still be their mover, and you wouldn't have to worry about having registered trucks.
Right. Right. And so or the overhead of even owning a truck.
And the maintenance and all the issues, because when the truck breaks down, you're like, U-Haul, I need another one. And they just give you another one and boom, you're back on the road again. Yeah. I mean, these are a lot of things to consider. You got to be a little bit more creative. And what they've done is make us believe that thinking in this way is bad. It's bad business. They actually make you think that in thinking this way, you are somehow cheating. You're cheating somebody, or you're cheating the system. And they literally want you to believe that that's true. But the only thing that you're doing is cheating them from being able to capitalize on your sweat equity, your blood money. And that's just the way it is. So
Yeah.
like when you're leasing space also, you know, if you call it a restaurant, if you call it a, you know, a store, they are going to have a whole different category of people that are going to want to come and regulate you. But if it's a learning center, nobody's regulating a learning center. And guess what? Everybody can learn at a learning center. So you
Right.
can always have a learning center. And in the learning center, you could be teaching people how to cook. You could be doing cooking demonstrations. You could be offering, you know, some type of a store. You could be doing all kinds of things that you decided you want people to learn about. And as long as you're teaching it, and hey, I don't know anybody who's doing anything that can't teach with a bunch of posters and signs. And, you know, people teach with continued education videos, you know, or whatever. You can have demonstrations on the screen. You can have music playing in the background at the same time. And
Yeah.
everyone, you have to be a little more creative.
One thing comes to mind, Neeti, is that I think we should also address is that when you nationalize your company and now you are tasked with, you know, regulating yourself, we call it self-governing, right? Can you explain to the audience what type of responsibilities, let's just say we're using the learning center as an example, like you were just talking about, and you wanted to offer up a, you know, a cooking class, right? What would be some of your responsibilities in putting something like that on without oversight and regulation?
Right. Well, you have to obviously think about health and safety. Okay. So what we're talking about is not going against you know, being
Public safety, being
public
safe. Yeah.
safety. Yeah, we are not encouraging anybody to do anything rogue and dirty. Okay.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you have to have a higher standard. You have to have
Correct.
standards for yourself. I can tell you that in running my business, the regulatory standards don't meet my standards. My standards are far beyond their standards. And I actually, interestingly, funnily, I was the first speaker at the Rogue Food Conference in 2020. And I think the terminology rogue food,
I love that.
it came up because people wanted to break out of the cage. Okay, like breaking
Yeah.
out of the system. And Joel talked about, you know, finessing the system and referred to it as finessing the system. But this is a fraud, a great fraudulent system. We don't need to finesse the fraud. We need to expose the fraud. And
Yeah.
so that is what led me to this moment where I had to figure out how would I teach other people to be able to run a rogue food church, because by being the first speaker, everybody expected me to be able to show them how to go rogue. Right? Well, how do you go rogue? Well, you have to unincorporate to deregulate. And then you can do that. That's why I had the award from the USDA and the CDC and the, you know, all these people who told me that I was a self-proclaimed governing body, because we Americans are self-governing, y'all.
Well, and I want to get back to, because I'm trying to make this a little bit more applicable, right? Is that when getting back to, you know, let's just say a rogue, you know, food church, right? Or getting back to teaching a food class at a learning center.
Right.
What line of what thought process did you use when coming up with your higher standards, you know, the regulating yourself at a higher standard? What were some of the questions that you asked yourself that led you to the answers to get you to that higher level? Like if we're talking
And,
about
and, and
safety, for instance.
instead of asking those questions, for me, I'll tell you what happened. I found out that they were poisoning our food system. So I didn't need to ask myself a whole lot of questions. I had to know for a fact that they are bleaching our produce. They bleach eggs. They are literally using chlorine to poison people with their food, just as step one. Okay. So what are my standards? We will not be doing that. What are my
Yeah.
standards?
So I
Like,
think
well, hold
what
on.
I'm
My standards took me all the way back to the farm because you're asking me what I had to do to meet those standards. Well, that meant that I had to go all the way to the farm. I had to go and inspect the farm. I had to go see what they were doing on the farm. Why do the eggs need to be bleached? What are you doing that the eggs need to be bleached? Okay.
right.
So like we got to take it all the way back. And
Yeah.
so everybody needs to do that with their business on whatever level.
And what
think
would you
about
call that, Neethi? What would you call that you did? All the steps that you went all the way
Mhm.
back. What would
Well,
you call
that's
that?
kind of a health and safety check, right? Like it is
Well, it's
it
due
is
diligence.
it's the due diligence, 100%. You're going back, you're tracing everything back down to the beginning. Everything has to go back down to the ground. If you're selling candles, for example, in my way of thinking about things, I want to know, am I selling somebody a candle that's going to poison them?
Right.
Okay. And I'm not going to sell you one. I actually have candles here. They're made out of beef tallow and they're not going to poison you. Now, there are candles at Bed Bath and Beyond which will kill you because they actually are releasing chemicals that create, an
That will
estrogen
harm
imbalance.
you.
Yeah, I mean, they actually have an estrogen imbalance that will create a problem for you. And I can go back and talk to you about fragrance and about 25 million other things that they do that are 100% incorrect that is causing poison in your home. And so get out of the store,
Yeah.
like,
Well, and pause there for a second, if you don't mind,
mhm,
because I am trying to get at something here.
yeah,
So, like, for instance, you touched on it, like public safety, right? Because we
right.
have a health department, right, that is
Oh, yeah.
supposed to come in and check your facility and make sure that
Mhm,
you're operating on their standard, right? That's they're
mhm,
regulating you. So if you were to think about, let's just say a cooking class, right? Like if we're to ease the mind of people coming into the cooking class, that whatever we're doing is based on a higher standard of practice. Um,
mhm.
you know, what would be some of the things that you would be looking for to make sure that these are the questions that and the point of me bringing this up is that we have to start getting our people
Mhm.
and people in general, all Americans, whether if they're still US citizens or Americans, is that these are the things that are supposed to be our responsibility. It's
Right,
our responsibility to make sure that what we are doing is safe for the people who we're serving.
right,
And if we're expecting people to come into an establishment that we are offering as a trade, we want to make sure that we are setting a high standard for what health and safety is and not some hogwash bullshit about, that you have to bleach the counters and you got to use toxic
yeah,
chemicals to clean stuff. No, our level of safety is no, we're going to use these clean products because these clean products are not just going to keep the counter clean and disinfected, but it's also going to be healthy for us and our food.
right. And not poison the man or the woman who's alive who has to use that. I did it here for let's just talk about how did I set up I have a warehouse, but I set it up for retail. Okay. And so
Mhm.
in order to do that, when I first moved in here, it was very exposed because it's a warehouse and it doesn't have to meet the same standards as a retail space. Okay. But I knew
Right.
I wanted to use it as a retail space. And so I had to think about, okay, what if somebody comes in here with their 2-year-old or their 1-year-old or their babe who just started crawling, and they should be able to put the baby down on the ground. And if they can't put the baby down on the ground and not have to worry about it, then there's a problem here. and I need to see what are the issues and what would I do. So you have to have a level of foresight. Okay. And so probably people who are 24 and under won't be able to do this because they haven't developed foresight in most cases. Okay. But I mean, that's a fact. So,
yes.
that's the reason why a lot of things you can't do until you're 25 because you don't have any foresight, like rent a car. You can't rent one unless you're over 25. A lot of places you can't rent hotels until after you're 25 because you don't have any foresight. You can't think about what you're going to do and how that's going to affect someone else. And those people aren't willing to take a risk on you. Okay. So I had to think about all of these things. And then I had to choose to remediate that. I had to make it safe. So consider baby proofing your workspace. Okay. Like, what does that mean? And these days, that's pretty easy because they've told you. But, I don't see any harm in taking out the OSHA handbook and going over the OSHA handbook. And because I did that, I had to dissect the OSHA handbook and say, this is what I like about food safety. This is what I don't like about food safety. Right. This is what I have, food safety standard I have that's higher than that. And then you can remove all their lies and bullshit and put in all the things that they didn't think about. And now you have a better framework. And so what you would end up doing would probably be a lot safer. The things that they've come up with aren't total garbage. Okay. But it's a lot of garbage. Okay. And you just have to be able to use your grown up sense and know, okay, this makes sense. This doesn't make sense. There's a whole bunch of people. I'll give you a different example. They would want to be able to do like a home kitchen and they have dogs and cats. Well, I'm sorry. Pets have dander. You can't have pets in the house and also have a kitchen where you're cooking to sell food to other people because you are going to have pet dander in the food, whether you like it or not, because it's in the air, it's airborne. A lot of people don't know that. So when you start reading OSHA guidelines, then they say in a kitchen, in a commercial kitchen, you're not allowed to have pets. Well, why would you have pets inside anyway where you're cooking? It doesn't make any sense. And even if you're cooking outside, which is, by the way, cleaner, if you have an outdoor kitchen, you still wouldn't let pets come run up underneath you just because you wouldn't want them to get hurt. You wouldn't want them to get caught under your feet and you trip. You wouldn't want them to, get caught while you have a knife in your hand and you're doing something or a hot pan or whatever. So just think about this
common sense.
Okay. Like you have to use logic. And this is what most corporations don't use at all is logic. Otherwise, why would they bleach your food that you're supposed to eat? It makes no sense. But if you go to a farmer's market right now, there is no produce that they're selling that hasn't been washed in bleach water because it's mandatory requirement for the farmer to wash it in bleach. And the farmer doesn't want to do that, but they can't even come to the market and do that. They don't do it at home. They do it for you. You should think about that.
Is that a requirement in all states or is it?
Yes, that's a federal regulation.
Yes. And I want people to think about that too, right? Because they know that the federal government is not supposed to encroach on state rights, right?
But actually, they're not allowed to do anything except regulate firearms, alcohol, and tobacco.
Right.
So let's just go back. They're not supposed to be doing any of this, okay?
Yeah. So there's a lot of unlearning and relearning that our population needs to begin to think about and consider.
Look at this. This is great. Chris Williams, thank you for this question. Number one, he's saying, I haven't checked, but if you ladies know if Delaware recognizes unincorporated businesses, let me tell you what, the government that's incorporated doesn't recognize anything that's unincorporated. Also, why do we care? Also, we don't care. Also, every religion is incorporated.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a hard fact for people to swallow, is that all of the churches have been captured. That's why they're 501c3s. Our churches were never, it was supposed to be a separation of church and state. So I hope
And a
people.
501c3 is a
Corporation.
incorporated.
Yes.
These are corporate structures.
Yep.
And religious reasons are corporate minded, corporate structure, corporate everything. And the reason they don't recognize you, Chris, as being an unincorporated business is because they are dead fictions. They can't recognize the living. Right. And recognize is a legal term. What recognize means is that they permit. You want their permission?
Right.
So recognize means you're seeking permission from the I have to find a good word.
Well, you're trying to think of more.
They're brigands, okay? These are pirates. They are brigands.
Yeah, they're inland pirates.
They're inland pirates. They are on the land and soil, impressing and imposing and presuming commercial business onto you. Commerce, they're impressing and imposing and presuming. These are all legal terms that they are violating you with barratry, color of law, personage. There's so many more. I mean, they're breaking every rule in the book, okay? Inland piracy, like she says, okay?
Yeah.
So we don't care. We don't care. Guess what? They don't recognize me. They said, oh, she's a self-proclaimed governing body. But you know what? They solicit me. So they'll solicit me. They're going to come by your place of business and be like, hey, we need to come and inspect you. They're not going to be like, hey, friend, can we inspect you? Hey, friend, do you want to incorporate and do business with? That's not the solicitation, okay, Chris?
Well, and that's how they were able to get away with this for so long, Neethi, is that they don't ask. They don't ask for permission. They tell you that they need to come in, and it's up to you to know your rights.
Yes, you have to know who you are.
Yes,
you have to know. Like, you got to be the man, Chris, and be like, no, because you're the enforcer, right? You're the man. You're the enforcer. You're going to be like, no, thank you. And they're going to be like, but blah, 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 blah. And you're going to be like, no. And you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be armed. You're not at war. We're not having a civil war, y'all. We're people at peace. Okay. Yes. We already won the war. You
can very peacefully say no. No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No,
I did. I said no, thank you. But they came at me with guns, and they were big guys. Okay, I'm not that big of a lady, and they came to me with these. They were big guys. They had guns, and they came to my house with my little babies, and they stood out in front of my house for over an hour trying to humiliate me in front of my neighbors as if I cared, because I don't care. Like, the problem with them, the problem for them was I don't care. I don't care.
Yes, that's the problem, is that if you don't care, it's when you do get embarrassed and you care.
Right. You cannot let them embarrass you for being an American. They're trying to humiliate you for being an American.
Right.
They're trying to humiliate you for knowing who you are. They're trying to humiliate you for wanting to just do your business that you're allowed to do because you arrived on this earth. You're just here. And you're worthy beyond
You're part
belief.
of mankind.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You're worthy beyond belief, and you have arrived, and no one can come between you and your sweat equity, your gift that you are to man. And to all of us. So
as long as you do no harm, and you do no harm to somebody or somebody's property, you are free to live your life.
And to this point, John, we don't even have to rebut it. This is what you do, John. You don't rebut. When they show up at your place, you ask them, this is what you do. You say, I don't understand the words coming out of your mouth. I'm going to need you to put that in writing. And
Yeah,
they
maybe.
won't. They will not put it in writing. They will not give you a notice in writing because they're pirates.
Right.
And
But
pirates.
they do try to solicit business through the mail too. And so I
Well,
think
these
that's
guys don't. They're not the regulators. The regulators don't. Regulators come and try to regulate, okay? But
yeah.
they will not put it in writing no matter what. When you are a businessman and you're running your business, okay? And they come, you got to let us inspect you. I have fire marshals come and they're like, you got to let us inspect your space. No, I don't. No, I don't. I'm busy. No, thank you. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Send
Thank
me
you
the
for your
invitation in
service.
the mail.
Right. Yeah. You got to tell them, you got to say to them, I do not understand the words coming out of your mouth. I'm going to need you to put it in writing. And this is the practice that I want to encourage all you men. Okay. And I'm talking to women. You're the living men. All right. Listen, we do not respond to their words. They can come and say whatever they want to say to you. You're going to say, I'm going to need you to put that in writing. Well, no, we are here and we need to do blah, blah, blah. No, thank you. You're going to need to put that in writing. And what the first thing I would always do, y'all, when they come to the door is walk them back to their public space. So I walk them all the way to the parking lot, all the way away from your business, all the way down to their car. Okay. And then you say, okay, what is it that you need? After you lock the door and whatever. Okay. You lock the door. You don't invite them in. We're not hospitable to these people. Once you let them in, you have contracted.
Right. You've given them the invitation, the open door.
I don't run the business with an open door because they can't just walk in. They got to ring the bell. Any business that you run while these pirates are on the land with all this inland piracy, you can keep your door locked and just answer the door every time somebody comes. And what's the harm in that? It's very hospitable. It's very loving. You go, oh my gosh, hey, come on in. You bring them in and you talk to them and you handle the business that you have with them. Have someone around the door. A lot of, grocery stores or these boutiques or whatever, they have somebody who's working the floor anyway. Why can't they answer the door? They can answer the door. What are they going to do? Climb in the window? You could have windows open. It could be very otherwise hospitable, right?
And I think that these are just adjustments and changes that people just need to get acclimated to because they're not used to, to doing things this way. But, there are ways to go about running your business, if you nationalize it. And
right.
So,
and we don't use any of these either. These are all corporate documents, corporate structures. Sorry, Tammy, I yield back to you.
Yeah, no worries. I think there are people out there that are trying to find, loopholes and remedies within the system,
Mm-hmm.
and at the, I like to explain it this way, and I'm in no way, shape, or form here to judge anybody because I know at the end of the day, we're trying to navigate through the exiting out of the system, right? What is the smoothest way possible that I can navigate and exit the system and get back to living in the amongst the living and lawful way of living. And so this is no blame or shame on anybody, but all of those forms are their forms. And so, we don't need any of those forms. And that's, again, is going back to asking for permission to do the things that you already have an inherent right to do.
So the only thing I'm going to say to your point, Tammy, because it's perfectly stated, because I do want to speak to this, John. What you're saying, John, in these cases that you're putting here in the chat, they're all for people who have not yet declared themselves as Americans. If you're not a declared American, if you haven't corrected your political status and declared yourself as an American, because what they did, John, was they unlawfully and illegally gave you a birth certificate which that was actually a death certificate putting you in a different jurisdiction, and you didn't know it. People don't know that. None of us knew it. It was done while we were babes in a cradle. So it was unconscionable. Okay.
And I think touching on this, like
Mhm.
if you go back to the last statement, right?
Mhm.
I believe what he's referring to is the state, the state of.
Well,
Because
but they can't presume upon you verbally, and we don't have to rebut a verbal presumption. When they come and they say blah 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 blah, and we say to them, put it in writing, and they don't, because we are rebutting it by saying, I don't understand the words coming out of your mouth. Go put it in writing. I don't understand the words coming out of your mouth. Go put it in writing.
Yeah.
I don't understand. You just keep saying that.
But you will have to rebut it if they do send you something in writing.
Right.
Yes.
But they won't. Because
and getting back to his last comment, he said that if you're party to any action, if the state is part of an action, any action the state is a party to, the Supreme Court has primary jurisdiction. No, the state of, if you are working within the state of, and that is the corporation, right? What we're talking about is the Americans, the American state nationals, and
the declared Americans. Yeah. Declared Americans stand outside of that. We have superior, concurrent, general jurisdiction in all the realms because we are outside of the veil. Anyone who has not status corrected is under the veil. And so you're going to have to stand only on, like your Bill of Rights, maybe. But most of you can't even stand on your Bill of Rights because you are a
corporation.
Yeah, you're a dead corporation. And so if you haven't corrected your status properly, then you can't do any of what actually, you can do what I did, which was 100. I mean, I did that before I was a declared American. And they told me that I was a self-proclaimed governing body before that. And that was because I stood my ground with them and I kept saying, no, I don't understand you. Because when you understand people, you stand under them. You are giving them all your power. I do not understand the words coming out of your mouth. You must put this in writing, and I will talk to you in writing. And if you don't speak to me in writing, then bye. I don't need to speak to you at all. Okay.
Right.
And interestingly, Tammy, we have like 3 Johns, but I also want to honor your time. And your time is up. So
yes,
Tammy's got a deadline today, you guys, and I'm trying to keep her time for her. And both Tammy and I are enjoying our families. We're enjoying a lot of things that are going on in our lives right now. We're putting a lot of our energy into our babies, and we also love you guys so much. So we're going to still come here, but we might pop in and out on a hard hour. And all we're going to be working on, I think, this summer is trying to help you all fully comprehend and grasp the benefits of how to declare yourself as an American, how to nationalize your business, which is everything that you do, every possible thing that you do to earn for your family, because we want all Americans to be able to exercise the freedom that our forefathers fought and bled for.
Right. And a good point too is that the founders didn't give us our freedoms. They just declared that this was the way it was supposed to be from the very beginning,
Right.
And so if you read the Declaration of Independence, the unanimous Declaration of Independence, you'll see in there that they say that our rights are inherent from God, our creator. Nature's God. So, you have to know who you are in order to exercise your God-given rights.
And with that, we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Yeah. Have a good week, guys.
Thanks, everybody.